Hello and welcome to Intertextual Experience, where in this 43rd episode, we are going to see why. No, we are going to be talking about CMYK with CEO and co-founder of the company, Alex Hague. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm great.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to have you on, and we were chatting a bit, um, heading into the episode and I've kind of have this structure for you where you're basically going to see four images and I'll try to share the screen correctly in just a second here so it's not like too jumbled, but they're kind of like figment-ish. So they have color breakdowns where like a percentage of the four colors, magenta, blue, green, and silver, just like the game Figment, pop up a certain percentage within the image the most. This isn't an exact science because I just threw it into like an image color grabber and the math seems a little ambiguous, so it might not be perfect, but depending on what color you think pops up the most in each one of these images is going to kind of like guide the line of questioning. It's going to give you the main question because they all differ.
I love it. And no problem about the percentage thing. That was something we like struggled with on the technical side for like months.
Well, yeah, my as you will see, my pictures, well, I think they get better. Well, here's another part of it too. Sorry, each one of the images actually links to one of CMYK's games as well. So when you see it, if you want to, like, because this is an audio only podcast, I'll share the slides in my show notes. So anybody who is desperately wanting to see what we are seeing will be able to see the slides. But if you want to kind of like guess which game you think this image is supposed to go with, some of them are kind of like component based. I think they're actually all component based. Yeah, and I think they get better too. So this part of the shtick here is that I wanted to do all of them in Google Drawing, which is not a great, you know, platform, and I wanted to do them all with shapes, and it wound up being a bigger pain in my behind than I expected to. So, um, yeah, let's see if I can share. Okay, share screen option. So I have a dual screen. Oh, um, one participant can share. My oh, here we are. Let's do screen two. Okay, can you see this now?
I can.
All right, perfect. Okay, so. So yeah, basically, again, there are different questions depending on how like the responses and everything like that. I might kind of use the other lines of questions as like follow-ups, but this is truly going to be guided by your responses. It is not an illusion of choice. I didn't just like I really kind of made like four different sets of questions for each of the colors, kind of. Or there might be
I
like
mean, this is like Figment by way of Brian Eno.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of the questions are very similar and just like worded differently. Some of them are completely different. Yeah, so let's rock. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to see, if you kind of want to, this is the worst. So we're starting with the worst. We're going to be building up. If you want to guess which game you think this is from, and maybe even describe what you're seeing to get you to that guess.
I'm I'm seeing three circles with minuses in them
hmm
against like a sort of pink or magenta background.
hmm
I mean, would it be cheating to say Figment would be my first guess?
That is
But
probably your best guess. It's not Figment though.
Daybreak? Trying to think of like the icon symbols on the cards, maybe.
Okay, so this one is supposed to be Wilmot's warehouse. And
Ah, this is your Wilmot tile.
yeah, this is my tile. So uh, I think I've set the bar low. Moving forward, I don't think you're gonna have any issues guessing the other games at all.
Well, now I'm like, what is this Wilmot tile? I'm like, oh, it's like the tip off of a basketball game. Like, like looking down at it from the top, the like two circles are the two players, and the green one is the ref.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, like a little 3-point line hanging out somewhere, kind
Hmm.
of backwards the other way too. But oh, oh yeah, I get and you mentioned the colors too. Get used to these colors because all the slides are using those colors and perhaps in better ways in the future too.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
so based on what you're seeing though, which and this could be completely wrong, but ba which color do you feel is the predominant color here?
I would say the green.
The green?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the breakdown according to the math, which again could have been super wrong because it was just
Oh, like the most used, not
oh
like the
yeah,
dominant sort of
oh
like
yeah, not like the folk,
qualitatively.
yeah, not like the
Oh yeah,
focal
not the green
point.
at all. Not the green at all.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Okay. Is it the blue or is it the magenta? Um, it's kind of tough actually. I'm gonna say it's the magenta.
Okay. So when I put it in, if I remember, because I basically just wrote on my document the breakdown. Technically it said blue then magenta, but if I'm not mistaken, they were like about the same. And
I would
again,
believe they're really similar. I would believe they're similar.
yeah, and again, it could be wrong, but so your pick was uh magenta, which actually gets you the wackiest question of the four.
Beautiful.
So
That was my goal.
okay, so this and each of the four images kind of has so with Wilmot's warehouse and kind of this initial question, just thinking about kind of stories, thinking about memories. That's kind of what I feel like a good introductory question would be. So for this pick for Magenta, if you were to describe the story of CMYK's inception, formation, through the moods of colors, kind of how different colors have different feelings, how would you do so?
It's an interesting question. Um, I think I would say it would like start with like very sort of like a bright, naive palette, like move on to a lot like warmer tones. Have a hard cut to like literally the color magenta recently, maybe. Um, and then I think like a lot looking sort of like now into the future, like a lot broader of like a full color spectrum.
Ah, I like that. Like I said, I that was my that honestly might have been one of the wackiest questions I've had on the entire document, and it was kind of a trap because like again, the blue and the magenta are super similar in percentage, but that's interesting. Kind of borrowing then from some of the other questions or lines of questionings too, because filling in maybe some of those gaps with some of those other colors. Then, like, what would you feel is, I guess, if you're going to describe some of the early, I think you said naivete or early on, and linking that to like where you are at now with CMYK, how would you kind of maybe fill in that part of the story with less moods and more story? Like it's been a chunk of time uh, from the beginning of CMYK till now, and it has been which actually some of the line of questioning gets to later as well. There's been just like increased production and this boom that is 2025. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess to think about it from the start, we never really intended to have a game. have a game company. Like a lot of people back, CMYK like sort of formally started 10 years ago, and we weren't even like known by that name back then, but sort of it was my co-founder Justin Vickers and me, and really we started the company as a way for us to keep in touch because he was living in Chicago, I was living in New York, and we were friends from college. And so we both, always like games. We were always playing games together. And so just, to kind of avoid the inevitable like rift that happens with like friendships after school, we wanted to like have like a kind of project that we worked on together. And hilariously enough, it was another Chicago-based company, Cartoons Humanity, that had just sort of come out that year. And we played the game and just, I think it's hard to get back in the headspace of like 2014, 2015, because like Cartoons Humanity has just been around for so long and has been sort of like is just like become a certain standard for a type of party game and everything. But it was like really shocking when it came out. And I think people like forget that and assume like, oh, that was like so derivative or whatever it was. And it was a actually really surprising thing to exist in the world back then, I remember. And but I also know that like it was, it felt like this like scrappy independent project by people who were just sort of like seeing what sticks. And it was one of the things that really gave us the confidence to make Monikers our first game because we just, like it was just a little bit of that, like, well, those guys can do it, so can we. Like, not to say, I mean, like, not to say that like they're, anybody could do it, but like it was like, oh, all of a sudden there are like things in place where like you don't have to really be an expert at like knowing how to like the print manufacturing process or needing a lot of like early upfront capital to like do a print run. You can use Kickstarter or whatever. And so like that was like an era where like everything really did lock into place that like a like really small team of like creative people could just like make a thing and like put it on Kickstarter and see if it spoke to people. And if it did, like it just would make its way out in the world. And so we were really lucky to just to like hit at just the right time. And monikers just sort of grew out of our love of the folk game celebrity. It's called Fishbowl, called a million things, the hat game. And we had always been informally writing cards or like slips of paper, I guess, for our friends and family and things like that for it. And like people were always like loving them because it's like it's a folk game that requires you to like have a lot of like upfront creativity and is like under a little bit of like time pressure. And so the idea of like relieving some of that pressure with really interesting, good pre-written cards was like a little bit of a no-brainer. And then realizing that like, oh, a Cartoons Humanity could like bring an entirely different comic sensibility to like the game that they're riffing off of. Like we had already been sort of naturally doing that with ours, and we're like, oh, maybe like more people than just like our friends and family would enjoy this. And it turns out that that was definitely the case.
Oh, that's really neat. So you kind of mentioned with that wanting to keep that connection with Justin from college as you like moved physically apart. Were there, you know, I mean, I think obviously you kind of mentioned probably some of the like the party games and things that you were thinking about and working on at that time. Were there any other things that the two of you and your friend group were playing or doing in college that really stuck out to you?
I mean, it's maybe a little strange, but like I guess so. Stepping back in college, yes. I mean, there was just so much werewolf being played. Also, that was another thing that was like so huge in those like formative years for like social games, and so just like playing sort of like weird riffs on that. However, like the rules sort of got passed down to our little like corner of the country. But then beyond that, like my background and some of Justin's background too is in like games that like you would just like not associate with CMYK. Like just, back around that time, I mean, it was just such a like prolific era for specific kinds of Euro games that like, I like desperately love like stuff like Agricola and everything. Like that's a little older than that, but like things from around those times that I think were like really formative in terms of like thinking about like game design and like what I wanted to do. Like I was a little bit more in that world back then. Even like, I mean, like the crazy thing is like even more into like I really love the company GMT, and like, was really, really obsessed with Twilight Struggle among other games. And so there's a world in which like the company like makes far different things, but like because of how we started, I think, and because of our like natural movement towards like personally being interested in games that are like a little bit more rules light and things like that and accessible to new people. That wasn't where we happened to go, but like there's some weird alternate world where we're making like coin games or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that I mean, maybe that alternate reality, that extra lens. Okay, I yeah, a lot of things that you mentioned in that. First off, the inception story through the moods, the colors, and then elaboration on that yeah, really interesting and kind of serve with the focus of what all of these random things I'm throwing at you are getting at, and that is just kind of this idea of lenses. And I forgot to mention at the top, I even had these red or rose colored glasses that I found the other day, and I don't know where I put them because I saw them. I kind of mentally marked like, oh yeah, they're here. I think they were in the garage. And then I was looking and I couldn't find them, so I was going to wear them throughout the entirety of this podcast. But maybe that'd given me a headache or something. So perhaps that's not. Perhaps it's for the better. But I like that answer, and I think it does kind of again set up a nice lens moving forward. So moving forward though, I've got a little bit of a preface to this line of questioning or whatever question you pick based on the color. But let's just start with that image. If you want to again kind of describe what you see and then guess, I think moving forward the next three games are going to be pretty obvious, unlike my very bad. This was drawing number one, and I think you'll see that they get better as we go. Okay.
Okay. We're looking at like is that an axial view? What's it called? Or like a straight ahead view of a wavelength device in the box, I would guess.
Yeah, that is the correct guess. And now that I'm looking at it too, I feel like I had those two blue half oval things actually lined up, and now they look off centered. And also, to me, when I was looking at it I just can't not see the Pringles mustache man in
It
that
was
thing.
dude, it was really hard to make the wavelength like device not look like a demented clown.
Like
I
what I
think it's
did in this
because
image.
I mean exactly. But it's like it just sort of inevitably wants to be a demented clown. But I think it might be the red nose.
Yeah.
Um, but it was weird, and also like the scalloping of the wheel. I think like it just does kind of suggest hair. I don't know. I think I just stared at it for way too long in a sort of like CAD view where I'm like, is this gonna look like a clown to anybody else?
Well, for for what it's worth, from my point of view, my perspective, the wavelength device looks really great, and it looks at least 1,000 times better than this demented clown mustache Pringles looking man that I made for you. But the follow-up question then is okay, pretty definitely a little more straightforward in guessing what it is. Which color here do you think has the highest percentage?
Okay, I was afraid you'd ask. I was just waiting for it.
Staring at the picture.
I think it's gray.
Yeah. According to what I put in, that was the correct answer too, which again could be right or wrong. Okay, but interesting. And I kind of mentioned this in our email communication, haven't mentioned it in this episode yet, but the timing of me thinking about this idea for this episode, I've been thinking about it for a bit. I've been, buying more CMYK games. Well, I had a chunk, bought more, played more, enjoyed it. So I've been thinking about um, that and a full spoiler. So technically, this game I played quite a bit of Wavelength, and then the next two games that I have for you, I've played as well, but I have not actually played Wilmot's Warehouse, which is really sad. But the reason I included it is because, well, I own it and I meant to play it, and I think it ties into this line of questioning really well. And you had chunks of an interview that you did with Amabel Holland on her video recently that came out, Boxes Selling Framing Meaning. A fantastic video. It'll be linked in the show notes, and I think it just the conversations there are fantastic and kind of will tie to the line of questioning that I have here as well. But part of the thing that I was thinking about with not having had played Wilmot's Warehouse is, well, one, like any game night, I was thinking about playing it. So I was like, oh, okay, well, obviously I have to, like open up the game, read the rules, even though I have pretty good general sense of how the game plays. I'm like, oh, probably have to like punch things and organize it. But to my like pleasant surprise, when I opened it up, all of the tiles were in the bag already. Everything is, super well organized and ready to like get to the table right away. I think your approach with rule books when we're thinking about, box framing and meeting, the way that the rule books, especially, well, probably forever, but just the ones that I've been looking at more recently are like bigger, but almost in a sense that it's just like bigger for the sake of page turning. Like you can really easily go from one page to the next and get like the full story of how the game plays quite easily, based on the way that you are creating them. So then that's like all a preface for, I guess, this thought and this line of questioning and presentation is that, when you are creating a game for CMYK, what vision serves as like the biggest through line for that project? And I know that's general, so maybe you can think of like a specific example, but I guess anything along those lines is the question.
Do you mean like across all of our games, or like specifically like when we're working on like one in the moment?
Um, how about let's go from broad to specific. Does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I guess like yeah, this is something I've like been thinking about a little bit recently as to like be like there's like some like connective tissue between a lot of like CMYK games, but it's not something that I think we really explicitly ever think about or could like articulate. And it's something that like I think like drives potential design partners like insane when they're like, "What are you looking for?" or whatever. And we'll just like have a meeting at like Essen or something like that, and we're just like, like, not we don't quite it, but it's just like I don't know, like interesting ideas and good games. I don't know, like, but we've tried to drill down a little bit more into I think like what is like at the heart of CMYK's like kind of general sort of like thinking behind like what we offer people. And it's, these are all sort of family resemblances, not like every game has to have all 10 of these or whatever, but it is like, I think our games have like a high degree of like the ability to like learn things about the people you're playing the game with, or like interact with them in some novel way that like gives you a different like view on your like relationship with like a friend, a stranger, someone new, someone old, like anything like that. But like it would actually our CMYK's lone other full-time employee, James Nathan Spencer, who again is like another really good friend of mine. We've known each other since elementary school this time. He put it really well the other day, which was like, we want to make games that like would just like not like you would not have the same experience, and it would be way worse if you played them on Board Game Arena. And we have some games on Board Game Arena, and I enjoy them, but it's like that is like a pretty interesting distillation of it because it's like there needs to be something about like the fact that people are there around the table that is just like providing a degree of like electricity or energy or fun. Um, Sometimes in an explicit way, where it's like if it's a party game and you're sort of like doing these like kind of like almost like empathy building exercises or whatever, but also in the case of like a Daybreak, which is like a really heads down like board game ass board game a lot of the time there is just sort of like moments of collaboration and discussion that I think is that does sort of like elevate it, and it's like that game you sort of like dive down really deep and then you come up for air and you can like have those moments. And so that's like, man, that's really like one of the really, really, really big ones. And like, never say never, but like, it would be hard to imagine making a game that doesn't have something in that world. And then maybe more practically, like gesturing at kind of what you were talking about. The other thing is just like really trying to like have a lot of like respect for people's time. Like I don't think it's a stretch to say like we care more about like how like the prep and setup for a game goes than like any other publisher. And like we're just like absolutely like demented about like optimizing for that because like, one of our hypotheses is that a game is often not like people don't decide to like skip a game because it's like complicated a lot of the time. People like decide to skip it because it's like hard to learn up front and requires a lot of prep to get to the table. And if we can make a game where like you can just like open it and like you're accidentally playing it as you're like putting it together, like that to us is like the gold standard of a game because like even if you're introducing a little bit of rules complexity here and there, people are already engaged in doing things, and like even if they're just like setting up little bits or something like that early on, like um a lot of our design decisions are really made around reducing that like bulleted list at the beginning of a rule book where you see like setup 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, and it's just like how do we get that down to like two or three ideally. And sometimes like in the case of games like Quacks, which is something that like we we publish but also like kind of like put our stamp on in terms of like a visual redesign, like they have way more steps than that, but like I do think that's another one that's like it's a real exception to the rule that's the case. And quite often it's I think Wavelength is a great example of a game where we like really nailed it, where like the setup is literally just like turn it around in the box and put it in there and you're basically playing at that point. And so yeah, that's like a real, and to even step even further back to like learning the game through the rule book, just like making sure people are not feeling sort of like cognitively overwhelmed on an individual page and thinking that they're like looking through a complex technical manual, because like even the simplest game is like pretty complex, as like anybody who's like written a rule book knows. And like you are essentially like performing an illusion to like trick people into realizing that a game isn't complicated. Because like if you were to sit there and to like list everything out, it would just like no one would ever play a game ever again in their life, basically. So yeah, it's just all of those things are like they feel. I have no idea how like other game companies operate, but like to me, and other companies like do this really well. Some do it badly, like some do it in between. But like I do think that like I would guess that we like spend a lot more time in the trenches of that and like really rejecting like a thing that might be a good idea on paper or like be kind of interesting mid game because it would just like add another bullet point in the setup or like make someone like a little bit more reluctant to pick it up and play it with their parents or something.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to chew on there. When I was, kind of mentioning, my collection and the CMYK games I have, unless I'm missing one that I own and have played or own and haven't played, I think the count was I own 10 and I've played seven of them. Um, and a couple of the ones that I haven't played are some of the recent ones. And for me, that 70% hit rate is a lot better than my overall like own played collection because I have problems. But and I think that does speak to a lot of like what you're saying, too. Just like a lot of the games that you want to have with the groups because the group dynamics are going to be different. They're not going to be something that you could necessarily get if it is played digitally. I've thought about, digital play. I play a lot of games on Board Game Arena, and I like exploring games that way, but it is a different avenue for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
And
most of the testing of Hot Streak was done in Tabletop Simulator, which is like the most deranged thing imaginable. But like, we knew, we had played it enough in person to know what the like core thing was, but also like all of us live in different places. So like invariably, like we're just like moving pieces, like little like fake 3D pieces in Tabletop Simulator, like 90% of the time for a game that is like the most IRL game you can possibly imagine.
you have to get like a audience sound effects in the background or something when you're playing that on TTS. Uh, that's really funny. But yeah, okay. So, hmm, in terms of follow up, I kind of gave you, well, I always add too many ridiculous questions and sub questions up front as well. But you talked about the kind of general through line really well in that one, and I think we might have some, game-ish or game line questions in a little bit, but here's another one. And it honestly wasn't even a color that you would have picked. So again, still giving you this line of questioning is 100% based on your choice of silver, but I'm curious about this thought as well. And I forgot to mention that, well, when we were talking about Wilmot's warehouse and that line of questioning, that was kind of about the idea of story and beginnings. And if it's not 100% clear what the line here was. I just put in brackets, I put vibes, and I think that has worked well with what you're talking about. But what's another company? Because you mentioned other board game companies, but what's a company outside of the board game space? That could be film, could be a video game, it could be a book publisher or whatever. Do you feel that you either draw inspiration from, maybe not even directly, or align well with?
That's a great question. I mean, we really like, I think in a lot of ways, we really do like try to look outside um, the like board game space in particular. Um, just because like I don't know, it's just like, I think it's like very easy to like become like just another like board game publisher and just sort of like make a lot of the same things, like take design meetings from people and say like, oh, that idea is good. I'm gonna like make it about like penguins and then like put some components in a box and sell it. And like obviously that's like a little bit unfair, but like in some ways like it's not. Like it's weird that the process behind all of these things is so siloed and so like I don't know, like we we really try to like think of ourselves as like a little like film crew or something. And it's like every time we make a game, we get a bunch of people together and we're gonna like make a little movie basically. And it's like we all have our jobs, but it's like, we're like doing this sort of like gonzo indie movie and we're gonna like spend the next 6 months like working on this game together and where it starts. I mean, occasionally it's like somewhat far along, but like normally it's like at a much earlier stage of an idea than a lot of other game companies do, where they'll just like take a pitch for a game that's mostly fully formed and then they'll like quote unquote develop it. Um, like, Spot started from like looking at a picture of a dog that was made out of dice. Um, Hot Streak started with like John Perry wanting to make like a bag or like a deck builder where everybody was like building the same deck and like had some like vague ideas about it being a race, but like that was like where it started. Like I think like with wavelength, like the original like inception of that was like just like guess what number on a die someone rolled. Like it really is like the earlier the better. We like to like jump into things like this and like I don't really I think this is like somewhat unusual. I mean it's like clearly like works, some companies do it, like some people, some companies are like solo creators who do the art and everything else. So like they're obviously like doing their whole like full stack thing too. But I do think that it's like a little unusual our process in the industry and like we look to other companies that do like really like like vertically integrated, I guess would be like the term, but like more just sort of really like holistic, like idea to execution level, like with a small team of people that, I think like great indie game companies, like I think of what's the name of the like Hades company? I guess they're like huge now,
Oh,
but they used to not
super,
be
super,
super
super
giant,
giant. Yeah.
super giant. Like, I mean, obviously like, a different scale than ours, but like we really like find a lot of like inspiration from that world of digital games. My buddy Zach Gage has a company that's a sort of does like daily games website called Puzzmo. I really like am inspired by
Uh,
that.
yeah.
Um, I think like maybe this is like a dated reference at this point because they've like become a bit of a different thing, but like our like provocation to ourselves sometimes is just like, how do we like become like the like A24 of like board games, basically. Like where like maybe you don't like everything we release, but that all has like a similar like there's a lot of connective tissue between it. And like the way that it's like talked about is so unique and interesting. And like there feels like the boundaries between like how it's discussed outside the movie is a little bit tied to the actual like experience of seeing it. And so love all those things. And then some of the other like inspiration for us is when we were working on our card game series last year, Magenta, we just like looked at so many like series that were like had just like unimpeachable collections of things. And so just like everything from like the Criterion collection to Fitzcarraldo edition were just like such huge touchstones. And so within CMYK, I think like Magenta specifically kind of has a different bit of a brief around like what we like think of as our like inspiration points. And for that one, it's more around just like how do we like create this like holistic collection of things. Whereas with CMYK, it's more about like what is like the larger composition of the creative team like look like and do.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, I think when when thinking about the way that I think about, CMYK and how you mentioned how people could talk about, your games and your company in kind of like that different way. Like that idea was in my head and obviously I don't and I the inspirations that you mentioned and the things that you're thinking, they make a ton of sense, but I mean, yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily come up with them off the top of my head, which is why I asked, and I think it fills in a lot of gaps and everything like that. That's really neat. Um, that's going to be an unintentionally good segue to get Pringle person demented clown off the screen for you and get us to that next line though. And we have, if you want to kind of again describe what you're seeing and then guess game first, color second. We've got
All right, so it is a series of concentric circles with some stars inside of it, and then outside against a dark background, and then there are sort of slightly different looking stars on the outside of the circle. And I am going to guess that it's Lacuna.
hey, it is Lacuna.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yep. And okay, factoring out the blacks, I did want the
Yes.
black to match that board, that cloth board. Um, which of the four colors that we've been or you've been guessing on, do you think has the highest percentage here?
This is like a diabolical one because it's like the border stroke sort of circle-y things are always like kind of the hardest. Okay, so I I think it's blue.
Okay, let's see. According to the the site that I threw it into, they said blue was two.
Is it green?
Um, it said the pink or the magenta was the most.
Really?
Yeah. But to be fair, okay, especially in these ones, and I don't necessarily know why I did it because I figured if I was punching in something that had very clear outlines that it wouldn't do this. It kind of picks up different colors. And like, oh, to be fair, I did color those two blue stars differently. All right, besides the point. Anyway,
Oh, I
anyway,
would have gotten it.
anyway, it like would give me a couple different pinks or give me a few different blues, and I kind of just had to mentally math them together. But long story short, blue I think was either it or was super close, and we'll go with the blue line. Um, and the thought here with well, I have a few things, Lacuna game, the idea of lines and connections, importance, and but always also the title gaps with the Lacuna as well. And you kind of talked about future thinking uh, a little bit. So this question is saying, when thinking about the future of CMYK, what are some dreams or aspirations you feel are still like missing? And I put that in quotes and I add not in a bad way or anything. And then I say, are there games that you're thinking about? And you don't have to be explicit or give away things you can't talk about here, but thinking about that you feel you would want to have the CMYK paint on, or just allowing more people to be exposed to them in different lines. Just kind of thinking about, the I guess future and maybe the idea of gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that I'm continually like hung up on is that I love that CMYK's games are in like mass retail stores. I love that CMYK's games are in hobby shops. I love that we can like sell them directly to people online. But I do really like my like really like outrageous like goal would be like, at some point in the company's like lifespan, like it just makes so much sense that like we would have like a retail presence that's like just ours. Because I do think that like the games do have like a natural connection to each other, like in terms of the gameplay, the visuals, and everything else that like would really lend itself to that. And like, I have been playing hobby board games since I was like in middle school, but like it's like a place where it's like a little weird for really like light accessible games to be sometimes. And then countering that, like you go into like a Target and like again, like CMYK's games are just like a little out of step with like what's in your average like Target aisle. And like we've like done great in both, but it is like there is something about like the fact that we're like in between those two things that makes me like really, really like itchy to like try doing something else. And so that's just like, I don't think anything is like incoming anytime soon, but like to me, that's the thing that I can like never quite get out of my head is that like there's some space where like probably like a physical space where we should be that we're not yet because of the types of people that I think our games like connect with the most. And so that's where I'd say like our big like at a like really broad like business level gap like would be the thing that I would definitely like would immediately come to mind.
That's really interesting. And my main follow-up question here to that is not something that I had listed in any capacity, but it's just 100% based on what you're saying. And you mentioned Target, and I think Target, I'm not not going to go on a Target tangent or anything. It's just like an interesting thought because, when talking about hobby board games entering more of like a mass market space, I think kind of I'm not sure if like benchmark is the right word, but like Target is kind of the thing. Oh, yeah, like Target has a pretty good board game or hobby board game selection relative to, other retailers or whatever like that. Do you feel as if, and you mentioned maybe there's not 100% sync up there. Do you think that there's a different physical space that would match up better, or is the goal to sync up more, if that makes sense?
I mean, I think one of our biggest advantages is that we're like so differentiated from a lot of stuff in those spaces. So I would never want to further align our approach to
Hmm.
that. One thing I would say is that like I do think like Target has like led so much on that, but I think like your Walmarts and Barnes and Nobles at this point have really started to achieve parity with Target around just sort of like having like great board game sections. I was like, this is something that like I live in Brooklyn. It's like honestly like I rarely go into Target or Walmart because I guess there's a Target somewhat near me, but like not a Walmart. So that was something that I was like really late on learning to just like see. But yeah, Walmart is like essentially like I think really competing hard with Target now with great games. And the last time I went to a Barnes and Noble was like filled with amazing games. And so that part's great, but it's like, yeah, I just don't, it's just like an inclination, whether it's like a pop-up or it's like a store within a store, or like whether it's like there is just like a an experiment where we just like do we have like a small retail footprint where we do like just the CMYK store. Like I do think that there's just like something really interesting about doing that. It's like very out of step, I think, with like what the rest of the industry is doing, which is like also very appealing to me. And like, this is something that's like been on my list forever to sort of like actually go into the nuts and bolts and like do a P&L, do sort of like business assessments, but just like at the level of like ambition and vibes, like I do think it would just like make so much sense because you could like, you know, to my point that we were talking about before around really wanting to sort of like at every sort of touch point, like have this like full stack like level of like, you know, we're like carefully like trying to like curate the experience at every single point. And then there's this like huge gap, which is just like, well, it's the store that you buy it in. Like I get you can go to our website. But if you're on Amazon, we have somewhat, we have some control over what that looks like, but like less than you would think. And, in Target and Walmart and Barnes and Noble and hobby shops, we basically have none besides like the actual sort of physical presentation of the game, but like where it is, how it's grouped, etc., is just like completely out of our hands. And so again, to this point of like to be able to like own every like touch point we have with like a potential like CMYK like fan, I do think that like ultimately like it implies trying something like this at some point.
Yeah, I really like that. I think, yeah, you mentioned Barnes and Noble, and I mean, obviously not having that control, as you mentioned, there's only so much you can do, but I feel like you talked about the Magenta line, and I just think the physicality of the products in general, like, I mean, with the Magenta line, it has more of a bookish feel to it. It has more of like a bookshelf feel, which I think would work like well in that space. But as are thinking about and throwing out here the idea of a physical space that is really just CMYK. I mean, yeah, that's going to be the best way for everything to be aligned, as you said, and that'd be really cool. I if that happens, yeah, I'm sure I'll be in the know because I like look up everything, but that'd be really cool. So I hope it does. Okay. Well, I picture 404, and then just a couple quick wrap up questions in line as well. And one of my two always wrap up questions might be a tad redundant by that point, so that could be even shortened than there. But we're going to get to the final picture, and I think this one's the best. I don't want to get like super hyped about it, but for having as from seeing that first tile, which was undistinguishable to a couple pretty clear ones, to my shape skills in Google Drawing at this point in time, uh, here we are. What are we seeing?
We're seeing a anthropomorphic hot dog mascot with some like sort of soulless eye holes for the actual like person running inside on a little cylinder base.
That is it. And obviously the game here being hot.
Oh, it is hot streak.
Yes. Yeah.
Is
Uh,
daybreak.
it's daybreak. This is a weird alternate reality. You mentioned alternate reality before. That would be something. Um, okay, so before we get yeah, okay. Pick your color and then I'll give the very quick preface, then I'll give the question.
All right. Oh, this one is so tricky. You really made a lot of really good ones because like it does sort of trying to like mentally jam the constituent parts into the like magenta hot dog is really destroying me. I'm gonna just go chalk and guess. Actually, I'm gonna be so mad if it's that. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go magenta.
Okay. So I math math tells me
Oh, it's gonna be
Mag-
gray.
yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah. These again, I
it's a
think
really tough one.
again could be wrong. I cannot speak to the accuracy of my work here at all
It was
because I
really
just
the like blue squiggle of ketchup. I think down the center of it probably like doomed me.
I honestly it might be. This was very fractional of a percentage uh when it came down to it. But nonetheless, I like this. I
This is why Figment is a cooperative game. That's why
yeah.
we changed it. It's like you got to have a lot of eyes on things.
That is true. I liked the cooperative nature of playing Figment. That was fun. And then it and then if you're really set on something and somebody else is set on something, then one of you can be more right or more wrong once the card is revealed too. But the magenta was your choice, and I kind of like this one a bit too. But nonetheless, the preface to this whole line of questioning was well, okay, hot streak linking to your 2025 output. I think there's a pretty clear line that CMYK had quite the hot streak in the year of 2025. Sent out an email. He said somehow our little studio released 13 games this year, which was objectively too many. That made me laugh. But a lot of those games, and we've talked about the Magenta line a little bit here, is linked to your Magenta planning. So a good chunk of the 13 games were in your Magenta line. What type of coordination and planning in order to make this a thing all had it kind of sync and line up for this year and this prolific output?
It's a really good question. So part of it is just not hitting deadlines in 2024 will definitely like give you more releases in 2025. So so really like yeah, we released like 13 games. I would say like 7 of those were intentional and like 6 of them were meant to be released last year. Like we are, I think we're like really firmly a like studio that's like it's done when it's done. We're not like trying to be, we're not like one that's just like what's your Q2 release or whatever. Like just, people will just go about their lives like not knowing a game was supposed to come out a few months ago and now it's out. Like it's totally fine. Like as we like mature a little bit as a company, that's like harder and harder when like you have, retailers and things like that relying on you. But like ultimately, like that is like partially why we do that is just, they're just like small little final things that you think will be 1% of the work and it turns out it's like 10% of the work. So part of how that happened is literally just like delays. Um, and then the other part is just, with Magenta, it was one of the huge questions that we had with the line was just how do you make people care about card games? Which is like a really hard thing to do because it's, I, I think they're like games that people play a lot and like really rarely like they don't get discussed very often. They're often like called like filler and things. And I know people aren't like pejorative with like saying it, but like it does like it still like begs the question as to like why it is called that. Like why couldn't you just have a night where you like just sit around and play cards? Like that's what like our grandparents did. And so I think we really wanted to like show people the breadth and like ambition of the line. And so we didn't want to just release one game because it's like, oh, CMYK releases a card game and it's in like a magenta box. Like, who cares? And so we really wanted to be like, no, here are like four games that you can sort of like use to like kind of I guess you can't triangulate with four things, but you know what I mean? Like triangulate like this is kind of like a mission statement for what we like about card games. They're like breezy and fun and like clever, pretty rules light. But like they could be about identifying colors or they could be a trick taking game that's pretty traditional. But like they needed to like, they all sort of are like they have a similar like you could have a card game night and play all these games and it would not you would never be like, oh, it sucks that we didn't like get to play like a real game. And because that's just like simply like it's just like where our personal tastes have been going, I think too, especially like, James Nathan joined us like 4 years ago or so, and like he is just like really just like such a like prolific card game player. He like knows more about trick taking games than nearly anybody else in the world. He just like so dialed into like the design scenes around card games, especially in Japan. And so like just like seeing his enthusiasm for cards and like being able to like sit around and play cards like was really I think eye opening like how like lovely of an experience that could be. And how much fun it is to just like structure a night with friends around playing cards. And it's just like an obvious thing, but it's also like it feels I don't know, like it feels so like adjacent to like the board game hobby in some ways to even say that weirdly. Even though like, everybody has their favorites, it just is like card games are like a little on the periphery. And so Magenta like always needed to sort of like drop as like a pretty big mission statement. And so that's what led to having six games come out in a line in the same year. And the first four were supposed to come out last year or sorry 2024 technically. So that was like why everything got like crunched, but also I'm really happy that like basically it was just like okay, here between these four initial releases and these two like final releases through the year, like I do think it sort of just like presented like a cohesive like again like thesis statement for like what we think like great card game night should be. And so that's like half of them. And then I mean some of the other ones are just like really we had like two new releases this year, Hot Streak and Magical Athlete. And so like those were like totally original IP releases. Basically, like I mean Magical Athlete had been around for a while, but it was just like really resurrecting that one from the dead from like a long time ago. And also just like had gone through a like typical CMYK process of like we had the like on like design calls and like playtesting and all of that for like months or years prior to that. And so those just happened to be done when they were done. And we had been like working on them for so long, and so like those were just those were just our two major like new releases of the year. Then a line of card games that like again like were like a little different of a process in that like all the Magenta games so far have been like more of a light touch in terms of just like we think these games are pretty much perfect. We're not going to monkey around with like what the rules are for the most part. Like we are presenting them just in a package that like your non-gamer friends will love. And then Quacks may be somewhat similar to our approach to Magenta, just like it had been like a years long process of sort of like, you know, we initially started publishing Quacks in North America somewhat as like a favor to Wolfgang, because like we worked so closely with him, and I think he wanted to just be closer to his like have a little bit more participation in like how that game exists in the world. And so we were like happy to do it because Quacks is just like one of my favorite games of all time. So we were flattered, but also like it just like we felt like it wasn't it like what it looked like for like the US market just like didn't really reflect like the types of people that were getting excited about it and playing it. And like if we could sort of like put it in a more desirable like visual context for people, we thought that could really like reach a lot more of the audience that could like fall in love with that game. And so that was when we were like, I don't know, I mean, in some ways that was like the biggest thing that people noticed about us this like in 2025. And yet like it was, we were just like doing a little visual redesign of a game. Like we didn't even like think of it as like much of a release, and it just like exploded. um and then I guess the last two were Monikers and Monikers Family Edition. There was another ones where it's just like, that game had been around for 10 years. Like we were always refreshing it, but also like it looked almost like the way it looked when it came out 10 years ago. And it just simply wasn't like, we felt like it was like not quite meeting like the quality bar that we had like gotten to with the rest of our games in the intervening 10 years. And we felt like we had like one opportunity to do like a kind of like a hard reboot of the whole thing. And so that was what led to Monikers. So like it was 13 games, but it was like between Quacks and Monikers, those were sort of like visual and design refreshes. Magenta was 6 games, but also we didn't directly work on them. We did a lot of the like obviously tons of product design on like what the line should look like and everything, but not like actually like, oh, like what should the like victory point number be or whatever. All of those things that are so long and so tedious in the design process. And so like we had a lot of like things like that. And then the sort of like two kind of like big stars of the show were Hot Streak and Magical Athlete, which were more traditional CMYK processes.
That's super cool, interesting. I think it ties together a lot of the thoughts that you put out like earlier and really just are vision related, vertical. With you said like some of the redesigns kind of matching them or like redoing monikers and making it 2025 version of CMYK. I don't know. I love all of that. And with that response, you also get to escape the twisted game of Figment that I put you on. But couple quick wrap up questions on the whole. And like I said, my final one, I kind of talked about like a little bit, but maybe, and I just want you to be able to share out there. But I have a forever penultimate question, and that's just a having you reflect on a text that's on your mind, something that you've been watching or playing, board or video game, reading, listening to, whatever that you just want to shout out.
Oh man, it's a really interesting question. I mean, the thing that I watched most recently was the 80s comedy Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. It was like I think Jamel Bowie like posted about it on Blue Sky and was just like reminded me that that movie existed and I had never seen it. I just like was like such a like I just like love like 80s comedies and in that era of comedies, and like I just had like there's something about that like never really captured my interest for whatever reason. And like the it really does like I don't know, like it's a level of like commercial art that like really sort of like reflects and refracts society that it was like coming from, and just like it is just like weirdly aspirational to me of like this is like a thing that you can like it's what we're always trying to do in our very different space of like making games, which is just like do something that sort of like exists within its time, but also is like a little, is critical of it or gives people like an interesting lens to look through it with. And like in some ways, like we do that with like monikers and wavelength, you can sort of like see those very easily. It's harder to do in a game that's like really like rules complex, but like it is, we really like, I at least personally like have a love of like film and fiction and everything else that really is like um is so intelligently made and with such craft, but also is like capable of like reaching a much broader audience than like kind of like obscure, the obscure like new wave French directors that I like or whatever. Like, and that's like always been like an aspiration for me. And whenever I see something like that, I'm always just so blown away that I'm like, oh my God, they like tricked me into thinking this wasn't a deep movie. And I like expected to like go in like seeing like, oh, like it's an early Eddie Murphy movie. And then I'm like, damn, this like movie is like the best like comedy of like its era because it's just like about like the like absolute like monstrosity of like the like world of like Ronald Reagan's America and money and class and like race and everything. And like you're just sort of like you're on this like insane ride. And then there are just like moments where you reflect on it. And it's just like it was so inspirational to see. And like, I don't know, sometimes like once you're like of a certain age, you kind of think you've like, I don't know. There, you just like sometimes like lull yourself into thinking you've like sort of like seen everything in a particular like genre or something, and there's like not anything else like waiting for you. So you like go off and like look at, start like doing something else. But then like occasionally you're just sort of like slapped in the face by being like, oh, there's way more stuff out there. You just like haven't encountered it yet.
That's that's really great. And I will, I mean, no matter what people recommend, I always try to do my best. Oh, okay. Movies are an easier lift than books or something. When people are talking about books, I'm like, oh, I will add that to my backlog. But Trading
Yeah,
Places
this
is
is this is
now.
a very easy recommendation for people. Like you're not gonna have to like work very hard to do that. You need like 90 minutes and you need to just like sit around and laugh. It's like I'm not like recommending like Infinite Jest or something.
Yeah, well, um, yeah, that's a different story.
Next podcast,
Next
Finnegan's Wake.
podcast. But oh no, that's great. I'm adding it to my list, and yeah, I'm excited to check that one out. But if people, this is the final bit. Obviously, if people are looking for things from CMYK to play and check out, obviously there's a ton of 2025 titles that they can do. Is there anything else that you want to direct people towards from CMYK in 2026 or anything just in general that you want to mention?
Yeah, we are releasing at least a couple more Magenta games next year. I sort of like the cat got out of the bag that we're going to be releasing uh, a like redesign of Condottiere, the like classic like card game from the 90s. Like it got like I couldn't help myself and like someone like mentioned something about Condottiere and I'm just like, funny you should mention that and like all of a sudden people actually noticed. So we're gonna be doing something with that next year. And then we will probably have another game with Wolfgang Barsch out next year too, that I'm like super excited about and is like one of the fastest games that we've ever designed because like actually it took a lot of work making a completely different game that we just abandoned entirely because we like found what was cool about it and then like the game like clicked immediately and I'm just like I'm so pumped about it. It just is like one of those like classic feeling like word type games that like that you're really always hoping to make and like it just really clicked into place in the past like couple weeks. So maybe like it totally falls away, but like it's just been on my mind a lot because it's like it's one of those things that's so simple that I'm really excited about and I want to get it out soon because it's just like it's so simple that I'm like worried that like the amount that people have played it or like escape containment. And it's like very easily like copy it's very easily copyable if you know what it is because it's like so simple that like you can kind of play it as like a folk game or something. So like it is, we gotta like get it out really fast in a way that like I wasn't expecting. I was assuming it was like, oh, like doing 2027 or whatever. But yeah. So more Magenta. One other game with Wolfgang, which is like always such a treat. Like he is like one of like just he's such a joy to like make games with. He's such an interesting person. And just like has an incredible like mind for that. And then so yeah, coming out. I think that might be it. There are a couple other like little things that we haven't announced yet that I won't mention, but if people sign up to our email list at cmyk.games, we like are very infrequently going to email you. And it's normally about like literally a new game we've just released and then occasionally something that's not that, but it's like it's pretty low traffic. So it's a pretty easy bet.
Yeah, I am a part of that mailing list, and I can attest to what you're saying there. But I'll add the links to that. Add the links to the website as well. And yeah, like I mentioned, if if people weren't familiar or just weren't familiar with all the titles and everything that you did in 2025, it's not they don't need to be looking too far in the future. There's a lot that they can dig into from this year, and it sounds like there's a lot more great stuff that's coming. And I just, yeah, thank you so much for taking your time out of making a million games to chat with me. And I couldn't think of a better way to bring in the new year.
Same. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Intertextual Experience, the most
Magenta.
podcast about board games and any other text that they connect to. Thank you so much for spending your time here. Your support through listening to this podcast means everything to the show's success. If you enjoyed the project, consider giving us a rating or review and sharing it with any other people in your life you would feel would like it as well. Any further support, such as sending an email to say hey, following some of the show's social media accounts, or contributing any monetary support to help pay for some necessary subscriptions would be greatly appreciated. All of that information can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep playing, watching, reading, listening, experiencing.